Hello, everybody. So yeah, it's great to do another live session with you. And if you can hear me well, just type in. Oh yes, Diana. I think I can see, and Philomena as well. Hello, hi guys. So yeah, it's great to have another session with you. And I would like to start today's lesson by picking up on the last bit that we spoke about last week. I want to connect. Hi Sarah. I want to connect all the different lessons into a coherent. It's almost like telling a story. So as you follow the lessons and the motions every week, I would like you to listen to the storytelling, because there's a greater story than each of the individual episodes. Does that make sense? The total is greater than the sum of the parts. Always. And in any artwork, the total is always much larger than the sum of its parts. I am doing these live streams as part of also an artistic installation. I'll tell you more about it in the future. Not yet. I'm still mastering the medium. But what I'd like to say, hi Angela, what I would like to say is that we are joining this adventure together. We are trying to expand for as much as I can. I'm trying to expand our ways of perceiving art and life. They're indissociated. You cannot separate art from life. Actually, the moment you separate art from life, definitely you're not an artist, definitely you're not an art lover, and definitely you're not an intellectual. You don't love the truth. You don't love knowledge. You don't love wisdom. You don't love experimentation. You don't love different ways of perceiving reality in the world. You don't love diversity. You don't love culture. It's that simple. So what I would like to start with is, again, this book. And I forgot to mark the page. It's somewhere towards the end of the book. So if you give me about 5 seconds, I'm going to find the bit that I've highlighted to read to you. This is really not fair, on you. I should have highlighted it, but I didn't. And this is typical of artists. Hi Paul, thank you so much. Yes, you listened to the Passionate Painter podcast. That was a wonderful, wonderful interview. I was so honored to have been chosen. Lots of great artists like Cesar Santos, and they were also interviewed. Paul, it's an honor to meet you too. I'm looking forward to exchanging ideas with you afterwards. So, like I was saying, I've got Prometheus. Oh yes, found it. I'm going to read a quote from this book. I've been reading from this book, I'd say for the last 3 weeks. And it's about Chinese animals and people. So I'm going to read you. Has recorded in numerous anecdotes, Chinese tradition had a fundamentally different view of the relationship between picture and depicted, between illusion and reality. We hear again and again that animals or people left their places in their pictures and wandered into the world, and that every harm they experienced in their wanderings was subsequently visible in their pictures. Instead of illustrating this conception by citing other examples, we select one that was widely disseminated and that sheds light on the attitude of the artist to his work. It tells us that the painter avoided putting eyes in his portrait to prevent it from coming wholly to life. The idea that the artist would thereby retain control over his creation by denying it full vitality, as it were, is rooted in magical beliefs. The image of the artist who bestows life, who enlivens his pictorial works by his labors, on the other hand, leads back to the belief in the creative power of the deity that breathes life into forms of clay. It's a beautiful, beautiful explanation about how different civilizations understood art. So, like I just read, the Chinese were, because the Chinese are westernized nowadays, the Chinese were very magical in the sense of the way they perceived art was mythological. It had to do with magic, it had to do with the supernatural. And that's why you couldn't give eyes to your portraits, otherwise the paintings would come to life. There's also lots of stories, which I would like to find one. I did mention the ancient Greeks last week. Today we're talking more about China. I can't find it now, but it doesn't matter. The story also says that this painter used to paint dragons, but again, he couldn't give them eyes, otherwise those dragons would fly away out of the picture. You know, they would come to life. So this mix between reality and art, between illusion and reality as such, you know, reality outside of the artwork, because the artwork is part of reality. So philosophically, an artwork is as real as reality because it's part of reality. It doesn't mean that it depicts the whole of reality. Of course, it can't. But this play of words between art and reality, external reality, was very important in ancient cultures, in ancient civilizations. And I would like to read you the last bit from this book tonight, which is has to do with the more you believe in magic, the less realism is important. Maybe that explains why contemporary art, there is this huge tendency to swing towards realism again. Maybe it's because we lost our belief in magic. So I'm going to read to you this little bit. From all these various empirical observations, we may draw one conclusion, which may again be stated in schematical formulation. The stronger the belief in the magic function of the image, in the identity of picture and depicted, the less important is the nature of that image. To take a simple, if not entirely equivalent example, in a certain phase in the development of children's play, the child has little interest in the intrinsic properties of a toy. The effects of imagination are so great that a stick becomes a hobby horse, a box is turned into a ship, or a broom into a gun. On the basis of this empirical finding, we can gain a better understanding of the far more difficult to interpret phenomena of primitive and folk art. In general terms again, whenever a high degree of magic power is attributed to an object, whether this be the fetish of primitive man or the miracle-working ritual image of civilized man, its resemblance to nature is rarely of decisive importance. Okay? So I keep showing the book. This is the name of the book. Rita, it's written. Legend, Myth and Magic in the Image of the Artist. It's also, you can also find it translated in different languages, because Rita, you're Portuguese. This book exists in Portuguese. And I just want to finish by I'm not a philosopher, but I love philosophy. I hope that shows. I'm trying my best. And I just want to say that the belief in magical power allows you to create dreamy types of art or dreamy types of symbols. So a voodoo doll doesn't have to look exactly like the person, because the magic does the rest. And the same was stated about children's toys. You know, the moment a child believes that fairy tales are real, that Santa Claus is real, then indeed a simple broomstick can become anything, you know, from a horse to a gun to, it doesn't matter. And as such, I chose to wear today this t-shirt. I don't know if you guys can see what it is. Oh, I just realized you can see my nipples. I hope Facebook doesn't censor me. Nipples is a big thing. And the reason why I'm wearing these t-shirts today is we are definitely living in the age of post-truth. And mind you, I think that was always the case, without exception. You know, I don't think medieval people were more interested in truth than we are. Definitely not. You know, the mythological was more important to them. I really don't think there was ever an age of truth. If anything, some elites valued truth. Some elites would consider philosophy important, scientific knowledge. But now we live in this stage where even the elites don't have to bother pretending, this is the word, they don't have to pretend that they value the truth. Because these people have been running us for a very long time. They don't have to pretend anymore. They own this planet and they know it. And we're all passively drinking the poison that is given to us every single day of our existence until we become what? We become what? Desensitized. Desensitized. I would like to remind you one more thing before we start with practical exercises. My history of art teacher at uni, at the Faculty of Fine Arts of Lisbon, she once taught us something that I was absolutely mind blown. And I've said this in class before, but I should say it again, and I will say it again in the future. I will keep repeating these things. She said that every civilization, every culture that is militarily based, that every culture, every civilization that works in terms of power, in terms of conquest, in terms of warfare, they have to train their own citizens to perceive violence as entertainment. I'll repeat, every civilization that lives from warfare has to train its own people to perceive life, you know, the bloodshed of real life has to be perceived as entertainment. And how do they do that? Nowadays, it's through films. Why do you think we have Hollywood constantly outputting car explosions, car chases, guns, killing? Again, speaking of the nipple, you know, you can't show a nipple nowadays online. It's a big scandal. But a killing, it's okay. It's fun. It's entertainment. Now, this is sick. This is absolutely sick. And that's something I would like you to think about as you know, film is art. Hollywood used to be art. Some great films they've made in the past, you know. I can't remember the last time I've seen a good film made in Hollywood, but there are still some good films. But they're just a minority. The majority of things you see are there to desensitize you to violence. And I just want to conclude with one more thing. We were speaking about magic before. We were speaking about the magical power of objects. We were speaking about the more you believe in magic, the more symbolic an object can be and still keep its efficacy. I want to conclude with one thing. Film nowadays is the most magical of all the media in terms. It's not that it's necessarily my favorite, I don't mean that way, but it's the media that conveys the greater sense of reality. So if you have a really well documented, a really well constructed film, you can swing the whole audience into that world, and it's totally convincing. It's totally real, so to speak. You don't need virtual reality, you know, to create reality. Film can do it very well. And because film encompasses all of the arts together, you've got storytelling, you've got photography, you've got the use of color, you've got acting, theater, you can have dance, music, because it's a total artwork, so to speak. It's a bit like Wagner's operas, you know. You've got the sets, you've got the paintings, you've got the singers, you've got the actors, you've got the storytelling. All of the arts are together. It can move us and it can touch us on multiple strings. So we become like this instrument that the film director can pluck at his or her will. And what I'm trying to tell you is that this is really important. Don't poison your mind. Don't poison your eyes. Don't be the average person, you know, be higher than that. You don't want to be the average person. The average person is now watching to Love Island. You know, do you think that's going to Love Island, or the average person loved Big Brother, or the average person listens to terrible music that can be fully constructed on a stupid computer, and they'll just have a fake singer lip singing, literally, you know, because you don't need musical ability. That's the average person. You don't want to be average. You want to be extraordinary. It's not up to me to tell you how you can achieve that, because I don't think I've achieved that myself. But it's up to us to remind each other to strive for that. Okay? I cannot give you a way, because I'm not the way. I'm just me, you know, a guy in socks, you know. Never trust a guy in socks. So I'm just I'm just one. But I think it's up to us to remind ourselves. I think everything has been spoken, perhaps even too much. And I just want to conclude now. I've seen people, I've seen whole societies being gutted out. I've seen people being emotionally sliced apart, open wide, and they have their internal organs, their hearts out there, and they're bleeding. You know, I've seen people bleeding. I've seen the elites of this world doing it on purpose. I am seeing whole societies now being bled to death. And I just want to say that has nothing to do with the coronavirus, you know. I think the coronavirus is real, but the coronavirus is just going to show in very few months, in very few years, what is relevant to us and who is relevant to us as a society. I bet that you're going to see the multi-billionaires being bailed out, and I bet that you're going to see hundreds of millions of people paying the bill. That happened before, that always happened throughout history, and unfortunately, it might happen again. And I just want to say one thing. If your heart is out there, if your insides are out there, if you're bleeding, those predators, they can have dinner anytime. You are bleeding. They will have lunch anytime. So I want these lessons to be also about your healing. Your healing is your number one priority now. Emotionally, intellectually, artistically. They all go hand in hand, okay? Don't separate things. They all go hand in hand. Okay, I apologize if I'm a bit pompous, but I like being pompous. You know, I like to pontificate sometimes. Just take whatever resonates within you, leave the rest. And let's start with today's exercise. Okay, question to the group. I didn't have time to... I really did not have time to read the comments from last week's live streams. So I did not have time to see what you guys wanted me to teach this week. It doesn't matter, I chose something. Today we're going to work with opposite colors. No more restricted values. Now we're going to work with the full value range, but opposite colors. So this is from the Munsell color scale, you know, the Munsell book of colors. And any two pairs, any two opposites, they will be opposite colors. So for example, red and that shade of green, or yellow and that shade of blue, opposite. Does that make sense? And now I would like you to choose for me which two opposite colors shall I use. So what's your favorite pair? Shall I go for yellow and blue? Shall I go for red and green? Shall I go for purple and greenish yellow? You know, you tell me. Shall I go for orange and blue? And I really need you to tell me what to do. And then I'm going to paint this cast, this hand. It's a cast of my own hands. Do you recognize it? Are they similar? You know? It's a cast of my own hands. God, I'm a really bad... I can't twist my hand anymore. Like oh, it's the other hand, that's why. Okay, it's a cast of this hand. I was like, where's the thumb? The thumb is crooked in the cast because it's on the opposite side. So please choose a pair of complementary colors, and I am going to paint it for you today. So yellow and blue, red and green. Let's see who wins. Just choose two opposite colors, okay? These are, and vote. And whatever you pick, I will use it for today's live stream. I know there's a delay between what I say and what you guys write. So I'll just wait a few more seconds and then we are going to start the exercise. It seems like yellow and... oh, and now red and green is even with yellow and blue. And now orange and blue is even with the other two. So we've got three pairs. There are exactly the same number of votes. Oh, okay, orange and blue is now winning. Orange and blue is now winning. Let's do orange and blue. We can't wait forever. Okay, orange and blue definitely won. Another vote. So let's do orange and blue. Okay? So, time to move this forwards. It's a very, very high-tech studio. Oh, I'm impressed. Some people are even using the exact names of the colors, you know. But orange and blue has won. So I'm going to pick a bright yellow-orange. I might have to add some yellow to it later. Yeah. So that will do for now. I will add some more yellow later. But most importantly, I'm bringing your camera forwards so you guys can see better. So you can see better what's happening here. This very high-tech studio. Made for filming, you know? I think something like this will give you enough scope for you to be able to follow the whole lesson. Okay, can you see the colors? Let me just check one thing, like that. Brilliant, like that. And now the blue-green, let me just get... I'll have to add a bit of green to the blue because the color is meant to be slightly mixed. And I've got another question to ask you. Do you want the light to be bluish and the shadow orangey? Or do you want the reverse? Do you want the lights to be orangey and the shadow bluish? What do you want? Because I really, really, really want to show you that it doesn't really matter what you choose. You can still get a lovely painting, you know? You can still do a marvelous artwork just by... Okay. Because my orange and my blue weren't exactly the same as in the Munsell chart. That's why I'm choosing to mix. I'm making this orange slightly yellower, you know, and I'm making this blue slightly greener in order to... I'm just using acrylics, you know. Let's matte acrylics. So shadow orange, blue shadow orange. Corena, what does that mean? Blue shadow, orange? Ah, you mean orange light. Okay. So you guys vote, and I'm going to start. While you vote... There isn't much reaction, I must say, from this public of mine. Haha, okay. There isn't much reaction, you know? If I'm not mistaken, it seems like the traditional is winning. How boring. So anyway, I'm going to use warm lights and bluish shadows. It seems to be the vote. And don't forget the white. I chose to put my Stay Wet palette in this position so you guys can see the color mixing. And remember, I'm seeing this cast from a totally different angle than you are. You are seeing it from the front, I'm seeing this from the sides. So actually, I think I'm going to rotate until I find an angle that pleases me, an angle that I enjoy. And I'm going to make another rule, just a random rule. Okay, this is the orange that we saw on the Munsell chart. So I'm just mixing the color that you guys chose. There was no need, you know, I could have used that orange, but it's nice if I respect the color. And first things first, we are going to sketch the shape. And I've got make orange great again, yes. Like this, you know, like these creatures. Oh, and what I wanted to say is that because we live in an age of post-truth, it's so bad that we even vote for people just because, for stupid reasons, like just because they say what they think. That shouldn't even be the criteria, you know. It's not what you... It's not when you say what you think that you are a valid politician. It's when you are a good politician. That shouldn't even be a valid criteria for voting. But we're so used to lying. We're so, including with ourselves, you know, we're so unacquainted with the truth that any idiot that says what he or she thinks will get our votes. This is bad. Okay, guys. Now I'm about to start, and remember, I'm seeing this from a different angle, and I'm not going to paint this life size. I'm going to make it slightly bigger. I'm about to start, and Sangeeta, at the moment, I'm not worried with the orange. I haven't mixed any pale shades or anything, you know. I just mixed that orange you saw on the Munsell color chart, which was yellower than the previous orange I had. And when you are starting, you need to totally ignore any sort of details. You just want a basic zigzaggy structure, like I've said before and many times, you know. You just want a basic zigzaggy structure, and you want to keep thinking about the relationships between the parts. So for example, how much smaller is this segment here compared to that one there? I'd say the first one is about 1/3 and the second one is about 2/3. In total, they make 3/3. And this is how I'm starting to... And remember, you are seeing from a totally different angle. Okay, this is roughly what I see. But I cannot paint looking at the screen, so I'm putting it back into this position. And recall that these things are going to be all corrected as the painting goes along. So at the moment, you really don't want anything more than zigzags. Please write it down. Zigzags. Nothing else. Write it down. I'm gonna check who wrote. Zigzags, okay? And when I look into reality as simple zigzags, then it becomes extremely easy to draw anything. You know, shapes become pretty much irrelevant. It doesn't really matter if it's a hand or a flower or a cloud or it doesn't matter. You know, what matters the most is the zigzag. Then you can start breaking the shapes a bit further, but at the moment it's still too soon. So I'd rather carry on with this very simple zigzaggy structure. Okay, pause for now. Let me turn into your computer, into the screen to see if you guys wrote something that I have to read. Zigzags, very good. Yeah, everybody's writing zigzags. So we have the start of a hand. And like promised before, we are going to paint our shadows bluish. And we're going to paint our lights orangey. I should have picked two brushes, you know, because this is going to be this is going to be really dirty water to wash the brushes. And it's a whole bucket. But look how quickly it turned orange, you know? And I was using minimal amounts of paint. Incredible. All right, so let's mix our lovely greenish blue hue, which visually it will be a complementary to that orange that we have there. I'd like to say that there are several types of complementary colors. Today I'm working with visual Yes, it looks like tomato soup, Corana. Would you like to come for dinner later? Today I'm working exclusively with visual complementaries. So visual complementaries are the two colors of the color wheel that are most opposite, visually speaking, to the human eye, to the human perception. That's different from pigment complementaries, which are colors that when you mix them together, you get absolutely neutral gray. So I want to repeat this. Visual complementaries don't look exactly the same as pigment complementaries, okay? When people say in painting class, if something is too red, just add a touch of green, because green is the opposite color of red. Are you talking pigment complementary or are you talking visual complementary? Because pigment complementary is the shade of green that will give gray when you mix with red. And that's a different shade of green than the green that looks most different to red, visually speaking. Does this make sense to you? They are different colors. So I want to show you this. You have this red, and the visual complementary is this green. Visually, they are the most different of all. But if you mix those two colors together, you don't get neutral gray. In order to get neutral gray, you don't use this shade of green, you actually use that shade of turquoise. This is the pigment complementary to that cadmium red. Do you understand? They are different shades. So when you say complementary colors, you have to clarify, is it a complementary color that to the visual human perception creates the most dazzling contrast? Or is it a complementary color that if you mix as a pigment, you end up as gray? They are slightly different shades. Bear that in mind, okay? All right, so I'm going to mix a dark color. And I'm going to ask one more question to you, my loveliest. Do you want the shadow to be more colorful than the light? So do you want the shadow to be vibrant and the light's grayish? Or do you want the lights to be vibrant and the shadows grayish? Or do you want everything to be dirty? Or do you want muddy? Or do you want everything to be vibrant? Actually, no. Forget that. Just two questions. Otherwise, you won't be able to vote. Too many options. Do you want the lights to be vibrant and the shadows dull? Or do you want the shadows to be vibrant and the lights dull? Okay? Only those two. So Raji votes for vibrant shadows. Vibrant shadows. Sangeeta as well. So this is similar to the aesthetics of Gabriella says the opposite, vibrant light. So vibrant shadows are similar to the aesthetics of El Greco. Dirty and moody and vibrant at the same time, Corana. What does that mean? So vibrant shadows are winning. Yes. So let's do that. So far, vibrant shadows are winning. So let's start with a super bright green-blue as a shadow color. And I'm going to make a few rules, because today I won't have time at all to finish this painting. You know, that's just not gonna happen. Because I don't have time at all to finish this painting, I'm going to create a few rules. Let's make this half abstracted. And every brush stroke I do, it has to be rectilineous. So I will not allow myself any sort of curvy strokes. Not allowed, okay? And why? Because. That's how you make art. Why? Why can't I make curves? Because. Okay? So I'm going to create a very, very simple structure. I'm just delimiting now where some of those shadows are. And notice that I'm not yet choosing the exact value. I'm just literally creating a relationship of shapes. Let me see if I forgot any important shadow. Not really. I mean, these are finicky details, so I shouldn't be doing this right now. Okay, done. I'm going to quickly paint the background just to create a, you know, easier to see structure. And like I've said, I will not allow myself to paint any sort of curves. Why? Because I said so. And that's the most artistic thing you can do. Why? Because if you say so, then it's art. The artist decides what is art or not, you know? The public just needs to clap. You know, the public should be giving standing ovations to artists. And I'm serious now. It's such a rare skill. It's such a intensive work of labor. So many people want to learn how to paint and they don't because they can't. It's so rare that, you know, the public should really be giving standing ovations to artists instead of dismissing them, which is roughly what most artists face. So I'm going into a bright color. Just run out of green. Let me make that blue a bit greener again, because we are working with those opposite colors. Of course, the color can dance slightly. You know, you can have blues that are a bit greener. You can have greens that are a bit bluer. It doesn't really matter that much. So I've just mixed the color now that is slightly greener, and that doesn't really matter. Let me crop that finger off, and then I'm going to bring it back later, so I can get the right contour later. So don't be afraid to paint over some of the edges, because you can always get them back later, if that makes any sense to you. Okay. Straight lines. Why? Because I said so. There's also a practical reason, and you guys know that already. Why are we painting straight lines now? Please write it down. I'm going to check if you've been listening to my previous... I call them podcasts because I speak more than I paint. There's too much talking and not enough painting. But there's a reason, you know. It's just because it's really hard to be painting and speaking at the same time. So I'd rather give you content, and then you can make your own paintings. This is not a bravura demonstration. This is not to show how well I paint, because if that was the case, I'd rather not to be speaking. I'd rather be in silence. I'm one of those artists that, in order to click with the painting process, silence is essential. I don't even listen to music, just to give you an idea. I don't play music when I'm painting. I'm in total, absolute silence. I love to be, one with the painting. I really do. I absolutely adore just paint without any sort of... Okay. The general block-in is now done. Of course, I will correct some shapes later. I'm going to jump now to the opposite color. I'm going to create now a super muddy orange color. And why? Because because we said so. Let me wash the brush. And remember that these two are opposite colors, visually speaking. But in terms of pigment, there's too much yellow to be opposite pigment colors. So if you want to create... absolutely, Ian, well done. Straight lines like in the bark drawings. Very good. And remember that you are seeing this from a different perspective. I'm seeing more like that. Okay? So be aware of that. I'm from the side. Now let's dirty this pigment. And if I just add that green, there is too much yellow. So the resulting color will not be that shade of orange anymore. It's going to be something else. So you don't want that. I want to use just the blue. And even the blue has got too much yellow, because the real opposite color to that orange is actually a shade of purple. You got it? Opposite colors, visually speaking, are different from opposite colors. Let me get some violet here. In order to dull that orange, you actually add purple. Oh, I can't find it. Lovely. I could always mix it. Ah, here it is. This is more the opposite color of that orange. Not visually speaking, but in terms of pigment. So I just want to show you that if I pollute the orange with a bit of that purple, it doesn't shift as much towards green than if I use that blue. There you go. That's still orange. Can you see? This still reads as orange, as that one was reading like green. And this is what I mean by opposite colors of pigment, in terms of mixing a grayish tone, are very, very different to opposite colors of, visually speaking, what color creates the most contrast. And this is slightly to red, that purple. So there's an easy way of mixing that, you know. Let's just bring it a bit more towards the blue. There we go. And it's again getting more neutral. It's still a bit too purplish. But now I've got a really muddy orange color. Do you guys understand? Compare that to the one on the right, which is super green. When you are using visual opposite colors, you know, orange and blue, you end up with green when you mix them. Okay? In order to get a muddy orange, you need to use the pigment complementary, which is actually a purplish blue. But the visual complementary is the greenish blue. Different things, huh? Always remember that when you paint. Okay, I'm just going to make that slightly more orange, so we're not totally off. Let's do a big batch of a dirty orange. Which colors I'm using? I'm using Turner acrylic gouache. I absolutely love it because it dries matte. You know, Sangeeta. And because I don't want glare in this painting lesson, I want the paintings to dry matte, you know. I'm using this matte acrylic paint. Okay, I think this is muddy enough. It's muddy enough to get us started. So I'm still just going to mark some of the structure, and I'm not allowed curves. Why? Because I say so, but most importantly, because Mr. Barg said so, Charles Barg. And we are dogmatic. What he says has to be. No, the real reason is you absolutely can't get the right values, the right shapes. If you start with curves, you know, you get the curves later. Let me paint a super pale pastel tone of this dirt orange color. And I'm just going to start blocking in. It's a bit too dark, it doesn't matter. I just want to have a structure, you know, a beginning. And notice that as you move towards the rest of the painting, you always try to improve the shapes later, never before, okay? Now a knuckle there, I'm going to add a bit of volume, and then the nail itself also will have some volume. The shape is now slightly overstated. Let me just correct this. All right. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start blending some of this color into that shadow. I'm not allowed curves, like we said. That's very important. I'm not allowed curves. I'm just smudging the colors together, you know? They were still wet. So it's very easy to start blending them together. Let me clean up the brush. Let's do the same for the next finger. So again, I'm now paying more attention to outline than actually to absolute value. The values are too dark anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter because we are paying attention to the shape. And there's one thing I must tell you. You could even paint the whole image way darker than reality, and it still would not matter. As long as your relationships between light and shadow are kept, you can paint as light or as dark as you want to. Because do you recall when we painted with a compressed value? Do you recall when I made all of those paintings exclusively with super dark colors or exclusively with super light colors, and it still works visually? Why? Because the relationships are kept. Okay? All right. I'm gonna leave this for now, and then I'll revisit that shape later. So let's go back to our big dirty light, as it was requested. I can't say dirty. It's muted. Sounds better, doesn't it? Muted lights. Now, shape-wise, this is wrong. Let me raise that finger. Yeah. And now it's the time where we start correcting some of the initial decisions. So I will have to raise this whole finger. That shadow needs to come up too. And now, question to the class. Do you paint already with all the different tones, or do you use just 2 block colors? Please write it down. And if so, which colors? Please write it down. You know, I really want to see more participation. Sometimes I think that I'm kind of hypnotizing you. You know, I'm making these woo lessons. You know, very wispy, like very mystical, and you get under this kind of spell. No, I need you to give some sort of feedback. You know, you have to entertain me, like I said last time. You have to entertain me. You know, it's my job to teach you, and it's your job to entertain me. Shall we make that deal? You guys entertain me while I paint for you. So the question is, do you use many different colors, Crystal? Or do you use only 2 colors at the moment when you're mapping out the hands? Very good, Sarah. You only use 2 colors at the moment. So a flat color for all the lights and a flat color for all the shadows. Because you are still designing the shadow shape and the light shape. You are not yet painting as painting goes, you know. You are not yet marking exact colors. You are just creating. Okay, let's bring this higher up. You are just drawing. You are drawing with color. And drawing with color means shape. So at the moment, you just want your shape. Okay, time to start cutting the thumb area. So back to the super dark color that we did before. And we're going to raise that finger up because we had agreed that it was too high up. I'm also going to trim it. It's too, so zig, zag, much better. And then zig. It was too long and it was too low down and too thick, you know. Let's bring this shadow up. So zig, and then the zag up seems fine with me actually. So I'm gonna leave it as it is. And this shape, oh god, this shape was wrong. This was off. So I'm going to actually drop it more vertically, and then more in there, and more in there. It was way too fat, you know. It was too wide. That's better. And again, that's from where I see it, okay? You are seeing from a different angle. From where you guys see it, this is way smaller than in my painting. But because I am seeing it more like, I don't know if you guys can see that now. Let me try to position this roughly. Because I am seeing it more like this, you know, the proportions are going to be a bit different. Now, I'm much happier with that. I can cut this little corner down ever so slightly. And now let's do one thing. I don't want these lessons to be you watching paint dry. How boring would that be? And I have to be a bit more cinematic, you know. I want to create a slightly more... If I was by myself painting this now, I would spend another hour refining the shapes. And this would be the dullest art class in the world. I don't want to do that. So instead, what we're going to do is we are going to mix a super pale orange color to start painting some of the lights now. And I'm always thinking of planes. The light in this room comes from multiple light sources, so this is actually quite it's quite annoying to paint because you don't have clear lights and shadows. But let's think of planes. I'm going to assume that all the top planes that are facing towards the camera are lighter than any of the vertical planes or any of the planes that are receding, moving away. Okay? So if things facing towards the camera are lighter, and if the top planes are going to be lighter, because that's what I see, I'm going to start shading now, and it's going to be conceptual. What does conceptual mean? Please write it down, okay? I want to know which are your views on what is conceptual shading. So you tell me, and then I'll tell you what I think of it. You know? Please write it down. What is conceptual shading? Yeah, the colors are very Matisse, Ian, indeed. Matisse used a lot of opposite colors like we are doing now. Not just Matisse, you know, Fauve in general, the Fauvist movement. They used opposite colors because they wanted the paintings to have a lot of fire, to have a lot of vibrancy. And opposite colors, they create that very, very easily. So what is conceptual shading? I'm still waiting for your answers. What is conceptual shading? I'm not going to tell you until you write it down. What is conceptual shading? Okay, I'll give you a tip. What's the difference between conceptual shading and optical shading? Sangeeta, the bits that are catching the light should be light. And what does that mean? You're not far, you're right, but what does that mean? Same with you, Ion. Conceptual is indicating an idea, it's not a final appearance. Warm. You're not cold, but you're not hot either. So, conceptual, yes, Laura, this is better. So, conceptual shading is I am now shading, just thinking of the planes in space and how they turn in space, instead of trying to copy the exact shadows that I see in reality. Does that make sense? Because when you paint optically is like the impressionist way, where you paint exactly what you see first, and you are trying to represent reality based on your optical, what your eyes show you. The problem with optical shading is that you get tired very soon. Your eyes get tired. And there's also another issue with optical shading, is that optical illusions will play such a big role that you're actually being misled and you don't even know it. So conceptual shading is the method I use when I start a painting, when I start the shading of a painting. So let me explain better. What I'm doing now is that all the planes that are facing up and towards the camera, I'm painting them light, even if I see them slightly dark, like that little shadow there, for example. It doesn't matter. I'm painting them light because I'm thinking like a sculptor. All the planes facing up and towards the camera will be the lightest, because that's where the light is coming from. All the planes turning away from the light source, I'm going to paint them darker. And that way I'm saving my eyes. I will leave the optical shading for a later stage. And then, yes, I will really try to copy the relationships I see with my eyes. But I never do that at the beginning stage of a painting, if that makes any sense, because you want to save your eyes. You don't want to burn out too soon. You don't want to be so tired after 10 minutes that you just end up painting all the wrong colors thinking that they are right. You don't want to do that, okay? Now we are about to end today's live stream, I'm afraid, because time is going away so fast. I'm just quickly going to knock that color down quickly. I'm just going to pollute some of this with a slightly darker shade so that the hand turns more in space. I'm making now a more neutral darkish color, you know, just to create a nice and remember, no curves. I'm not allowed. Why? Because I said so, and because Mr. Barg said so. the Barg drawing course, you know, the Charles Barg. And notice how I am gradually giving some sense of depth just by knocking all those darks away, by knocking those lights away. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. So the shape is starting to turn. I'm just creating now a little intermediate color between the shadow and the light, you know, so it blends a bit better. I can even start marking some where the wrinkles are going to be, the creases on the finger, you know. It's just a start. Definitely we're not going to finish this painting, at least not today. And now I'm going to mix a slightly lighter value, but still polluted, for these tones there. So I'm not going to allow any light area on that to be as bright and as light as the real light areas. I'm knocking them down. And finally, conceptually speaking, because conceptual shading is important, if the hand is curved, so if this is a curve, we need to shade towards the edge to push it further back into the background. So I'm going again to create a muddy, muted color. You know, it's still relatively light, so it's still within the orange range. And I'm going to start knocking some of those edges to bring the shape further away from us. And I kind of see a shadow shape that is more like this. I honestly don't think that's the shape of the hand, but I think it was the dye that I used to, you know, alginate. When you make a cast, you use alginate, and the alginate was blue, so it dyed the plaster blue, and there's a kind of a bluish shadow there. That's why I'm marking the shadow. But honestly, I quite like it. So yeah, I'm going to keep it. And just to conclude, let's trim off again some of those shapes because they got slightly irregular. Now this comes in and then out because there's a bone there. There, done for today. Okay, this is just the very, very, very beginning of painting from a cast that was more in that position. It's not exactly the same. I'm also at a different height from the camera, you know, and I haven't had time to actually deal with the lower part. So just give me a second, because my reputation is at stake. Like I said last week, I don't care, you know. Reputations are to be lost and found. They're not to be preserved at any cost. That's for children, you know. Children need reputation. All right. I think this will do for today. This will do for today. So shape-wise, I'm not disappointed with this live stream. I think it went relatively well. Of course, I would have to trim little things here and there. And like I said, I could spend now at least another 2 hours refining the shapes. Oh, I forgot that. that counts as half shadow, half light. So I will still keep it within the not too dark, not too light range. I don't know if that was helpful. But let me just knock this out so there is no... okay, much better. So now the shape is turning in space. Okay, it's 8:05. I think I need to go. But if you guys have any questions, it's time to ask them now. So today we were playing with opposite complementary colors, and we decided to to mute the lights and to make the shadows a bit more vibrant, a bit more intense. Just to conclude, I think I'm going to give a quick wash of super concentrated blue-green in the background, just to create a more intense visual impression, Yeah, that will be nicer, because that's going to dry. That's going to dry more intense, and it's going to be more vibrant. It's going to be more blue. It's a blue-green, and that will allow then the muddy orange to come across more intensely. See, by increasing the contrast, the hand gradually became more 3D, just because I've darkened the background. And that's also something else you should never ever forget when you are painting, and that is, in painting, relationships are more important than factual colors. So let me explain. We chose to paint with random colors, in this case just two opposite colors, just because. But what really makes the painting work in this case is still the light and shadow. So the relationship of light and shadow is much more important than painting exact colors. None of these colors is exact. Impossible, The hand isn't orange. The background isn't even this color. It's not even this value. Like, this background is much lighter than the one I'm painting right now. But it's the relationships between light and shadow that matter. And I want to make sure that this background is darker than any shadow inside the white cast of the hand. I don't know if that makes any sense, because I don't know, it does make sense, I just don't know if I'm explaining it well. I don't want any shadow in the hand to be super dark, because all these shadows within the white cast, they're still pale. Okay, they are still, it's still a white object in the end. And a problem with a lot of atelier teaching worldwide, atelier systems, is that sometimes they do get stuck in a lot of formulas that they think come from the past. Most of the times it's just misunderstandings. And I want to say one thing straight away. The atelier systems worldwide do not paint like the 19th century artists. That's a total myth. You just need to have eyes to see that, Look at real 19th century paintings, and then look at what is being produced in North America and Europe nowadays in the so-called atelier program. It doesn't look at all like 19th century paintings. The drawings, yes. I believe that they're following the drawing methods of the 19th century. But in terms of painting, forget it. It's a big, huge no. And like I was saying, you just need eyes to see that, You don't even need to study history of art more deeply, because it's just really factual and true. It's observable, that's what I mean. It's something that you can see yourselves. If if you choose to observe that. I won't have time to paint any sort of ground or object or anything, so just for fun, why not? I'm going to paint now a slightly lighter color, just for fun. Fun that is not even funny. You know, it's not like this is like, oh wow, that lighter color. No. It's just to finish the paint, you know? And that's it for today. So, any questions? If you have questions, this is now the right time to ask for your questions. Nice little hand. Somebody asked me before how you make a cast of a hand. Was it you, Raji? I think it was you. It's very simple. You just dip your hand into a solution of alginate, and then the alginate is going to harden, but it's kind of flexible. It looks like silicone, you know, it's pliable. So then you remove your hand off when the time is right, and you have a mold, and then you just fill it up with liquid plaster. And when the plaster hardens, you can rip off the alginate. You know, it's actually very simple to do. But that was a quick experimentation with two opposite colors. I just want to show you one last thing. Sorry for... I already promised 5 or 6 times that I was going to let you go. But I'm always bringing you back to... you know, back one more thing. Just to conclude. If you have a really, really, really bright opposite color to that blue, just look at the incredible contrast that you get. You know? Look at the incredible color clash that you get between the vibrant blue and the bright orange. And then it gets even more spectacular if you dull the remaining colors, so there's more like of an edge work than actually bright orange everywhere. Do you understand? And the same goes for the blue. So what I'm just going to quickly do now is, and then I will let you go because we're running out of time, is I just want to make a quick demonstration on how blue, so that visual greenish blue that we chose before. Okay, I'm going to paint now a light blue here. Look how spectacularly vibrant it goes against the orange. I'll bring the painting near you so you guys can see a little bit better. So this is what happens when you put two opposite colors close by together, you know? They get super, super, super vibrant. Super vibrant. Okay? So any questions? As usual, no comments. Thank you so much. Every Sunday at 7 p.m. UK time, we carry on these lessons, okay? So I shall see you next Sunday at 7 p.m. Homework. I want you to paint with two opposite colors. Pick any pair from here. So you can screenshot this color chart and then choose on your computer. Okay, do a screenshot of this so you've got the color chart of opposite colors. This is the Mansell color chart. It's the most accurate. And choose any of these two pairs. Just choose a pair. And then please do a whole painting with only those two colors and white and perhaps black if you need. I didn't use black at all in this painting, but you can use, if you want, even darker shades. And please, please, please post them online. I want to see your paintings, you know. Just tag me. If you post onto your Facebook, just tag me, and then I'll be really happy to show to my students. Yes, visually opposite colors, not pigment opposite colors. All right, the purpose is not to make gray as you mix. The purpose is just to make a nice optically interesting color harmony, a color arrangement. And of course not Sangeeta, it doesn't have to be a hand. You draw whatever you want. I just picked a hand just because. You draw and paint whatever you like. But please do paint, okay? Don't become just voyeurs of somebody else painting. That's a trap too. Thanks guys, lots of love to everybody. And yeah, and don't forget, enough of this. Enough of this. Homework for everybody. God, I'm running over time, am I? Homework for everybody. Watch the documentaries by Adam Curtis. Wake up. Watch the documentaries by Adam Curtis. You've got 2 documentaries to watch. This is your homework. They're about 3 hours each. They're spectacular. You can find them on YouTube, and you can find them on BBC iPlayer, because these are BBC documentaries. One is called Hypernormalisation. Write it down. Hypernormalisation, Adam Curtis. Watch it. It's about how even artists were manipulated, and self-expression actually benefits the elites. I will not tell you why or how. You have to watch the documentary, okay? So artistic self-expression and perceived freedom actually benefit the elites. Watch this BBC documentary, Hypernormalisation. The other documentary I really want you to watch, also by Adam Curtis, it's called The Century of the Self. You can find them on YouTube, okay? The Century of the Self by Adam Curtis. Both of these documentaries won all the awards worldwide for the best documentary making in the world, including the BAFTA awards, okay? Watch Hypernormalisation and The Century of the Self, and then we will speak, because then we will be on the same page. Do you agree? Let's do it, okay? Lots of love. Please share. Take care. Bye-bye.